Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, the USC Trojans, hosting a monster recruiting weekend where they're playing host to a ton of top targets from across the country over the next couple of days. And specifically, the emphasis is clearly on the defensive line, a massive opportunity for Coach Henne to really dig his teeth into this 2025 class, really starting to build some of those relationships. And we said this when Coach Henderson took the job at USC, not only one of the best player developers on that defensive line, this is a guy that knows what it's like to coach some of the best defensive linemen to ever play the sport of college football, right? Guys like Aaron Donald. I think that's going to be a really strong selling point to some of these top prospects on the defensive line. You talk about guys like Elijah Griffin or Justice Terry, guys that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. They grow up looking at Aaron Donald, wanting to be like Aaron Donald. Now his position coach is recruiting them to USC, a really exciting opportunity. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the USC fans. Many of y'all know it has been a blast, whether we're talking the recruiting trail, the transfer portal, doing film deep dives. I've had a blast talking this program. The amount of support the USC fans have shown truly does mean a lot. All the fight-ons in the comment section, that stuff means the world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be sure to keep you guys as updated as possible with what USC is doing on the recruiting trail. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I wanted just to pick some of my favorite prospects in the 2025 class that are going to be on campus. And you can tell there is a strong emphasis on the defensive line. And we've had this conversation a lot, right? USC on the offensive side of the football, we're very confident they come into the Big Ten and really are able to score some points. Lincoln Riley wants to make sure that defensive line, the Big Ten, a line of scrimmage sport, or line of scrimmage conference, I should say, you got to make sure you're good up front. I think Lincoln Riley's putting a strong emphasis on the defensive line. First guy I want to talk about, the number one defensive lineman in the country from the state of Georgia, Elijah Griffin. This kid's film, you can tell why he's a top 10 national prospect. You can tell why he's the number one defensive lineman in this 2025 class. He is not only a game wrecker, but the amount of physical traits that he displays on the film, truly special. 6'5", 285. He can win with power, but what separates him is at 6'5", 285, the athleticism, the twitch off the line of scrimmage. Interior offensive lineman cannot deal with his get off. This is a guy, 31 tackles for a loss, 17 and a half sacks in the state of Georgia his junior year. This is a hyper athlete, a true game wrecker on the defensive line. And right now, I mean, no secret about it. Certainly a Georgia Bulldog lean. Cam Fountain, about 12 months ago, was also a Georgia Bulldog lean. USC able to go into the state of Georgia, land one of the top defensive linemen in Cam Fountain. I think Georgia's looking to go back to that well and start getting some of these SEC bodies to USC as they head into the Big Ten. Elijah Griffin, probably the top prospect in my mind on campus. Next one I want to go to, and a very similar prospect in terms of the rare attributes of the size and athleticism. It's the number 2 defensive lineman in the country, and that's Justice Terry. And again, committed to Georgia as we speak, but this commitment is certainly not necessarily the deal isn't sealed, I guess you'd say, right? He is a guy that's taking a lot of visits, also on campus for USC this weekend. In a very similar conversation we just had with Elijah Griffin, Justice Terry checks a lot of those boxes too. Now, how I kind of differentiate Justice Terry, Elijah Griffin, probably the better football player right now, but I don't think it's crazy to say Justice Terry arguably a higher ceiling in terms of what he can be at the college football level. Extremely good length. You see him work as an interior defender. You see him work as an edge rusher. His athleticism and his bend around the edge as an edge rusher for someone 6'5", 275 is extremely special. Then when you kick him inside, his length and his hand usage, really, really impressive against interior offensive linemen. Elijah Griffin, Justice Terry, if you land one of these guys, you're looking at, a future All-American caliber player, a future top 10 NFL draft pick. Next guy I want to talk about on the inside of that defensive line once again is Landon Rink from the state of Texas. Now, a little bit of a different flavor than guys like Elijah Griffin in Justice Terry. 6'2", 270. He is certainly not necessarily the athlete that Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry are. And that's not necessarily a knock. That's more, just recognizing that Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry are kind of different on that defensive line. But what I love about Landon Rink's game, and you dive into the film, the power that he has in his hands is just different, right? You're talking about someone who's 6'2", so not necessarily the length that some of these other defensive linemen we just talked about have, but he plays with low pads, and his speed to power, his ability to collapse pockets, eat double teams is certainly there. I see him getting up to 300 pounds. You're looking at someone 6'2", 300 pounds. That is probably not the prototypical game wrecker that Elijah Griffin or Justice Terry can be, but he's a guy that you talk about eating double teams. You talk about letting your linebackers play a little bit more cleaner. You talk about a guy that in the pass rush can just take a guard and put him right into the lap of a quarterback. That's what you're getting from Landon Rink. And again, not the length, but being a little bit of a shorter prospect allows him to play with very good pad level and very good leverage. And you see that manifest itself on the film. Landon Rink, not necessarily the 5-star prospect that Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry are, certainly a massive target for the USC Trojans. Now, next guy I want to go to, and again, really, really special. We talked about Elijah Griffin, number 1 defensive lineman, Justice Terry, the number 2 defensive lineman. They're also having on campus another Georgia kid in Isaiah Gibson, who, according to 24/7 Sports, the number 1 edge rusher in the country as well. And Isaiah Gibson, when you turn on the film, there's the burst and bend that he has in terms of challenging offensive tackles outside shoulder. It's really, really fun to watch. This is a guy that has length and knows how to use that length. But more importantly, his get off the line of scrimmage has a ton of juice to it. When you start looking at what this defensive lineman could be, and again, maybe they don't get every single guy that we talked about, but a guy like Landon Rink, who can really push pockets. Then you have a guy like Isaiah Gibson, who is going to be that speedster, that Ferrari off the edge that USC probably didn't have last year, right? You look at guys like Jamil Muhammad, who were really solid edge rushers for USC. Did they have that extra gear when it's 3rd and 8 and they're pinning their ears back and are just beating tackles clean? You probably didn't have that kind of guy. I think Isaiah Gibson can be that kind of edge rusher, that pure, that specialist in terms of those 3rd and long situations where you're getting after the passer. Probably the best pure pass rusher in this 2025 class from the film that I've seen. 17 sacks, 55 quarterback pressures as a junior in high school at Warner Robins, one of the powerhouses in the state of Georgia. Really, really exciting prospect. And again, Coach Henne, I think what's kind of fun about this is you can kind of see Coach Henne, that appeal for these defensive linemen to want to go at least check out what USC has with Coach Henne coaching this defensive line. Very exciting. Now, the last one I want to talk about, an Ohio State commit in the 2026 class, but a guy that I think is truly special, that's Chris Henry Jr. Now, why I want to highlight Chris Henry Jr.? He's committed to Ohio State. He's from the state of Ohio, but you see where he's playing his senior year of football. That's at Mater Dei, or his junior and senior year, 2026 kid. His junior and senior year, he's transferring out to Mater Dei and Los Angeles. This gives USC a very good opportunity to really dig in on a guy like Chris Henry Jr. We said this all the time. USC, Lincoln Riley, they carry a very big sword in terms of recruiting these wide receivers, right? You look at how loaded this wide receiver room is going to be heading into 2024 with guys like Zachariah Branch, Jacoby Lane, Makai Lemon, and Deuce. There's an argument that USC's wide receiver, you see all the guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown in the NFL getting it done. This is a very attractive destination for wide receivers. You know you're going to be playing in a good offense with one of the coaches that's one of the best coaches in the country in designing offenses, Chris Henry Jr. This is one that I think USC certainly could get in on, but more importantly, you start talking about Chris Henry Jr., what makes him special? 6'5", 185 pounds. You probably assume he's just a vertical threat kind of guy with elite body control. Yes, though all those things are very accurate. What separates Chris Henry Jr., why I think he is so special, is his movement skills, his ability to create separation, run clean routes at that size is just kind of special. It's a little bit different, right? A lot of those wide receivers who are that size really thrive off those contested catch situations. kind of like a guy like Jacoby Lane. Chris Henry Jr. probably brings a little bit more juice in terms of separating and running those clean routes. Really excited about Chris Henry Jr. Really excited about the opportunity USC has in terms of a 5-star wide receiver transferring right into their backyard. Massive opportunity. I expect USC to really get into this recruitment. Massive opportunity throughout the weekend for USC. We'll continue to update you guys as it plays out. Wanted to hop on, talk about some of these top prospects. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.